My name is Aksik, aka Annika. Welcome to my channel. And today we're talking about how I put down thin watercolor washes or glazes as opposed to one heavy layer blended out to achieve this kind of a pre-pencil state of kind of a scenic page that, you know, to me looks more cohesive than I just put heavy color down everywhere. So without further ado, let's start cracking. Now, and let's do our first wash. Now, what happened here is that actually everything in the sky here, you know, the part was exactly the same. And then I kind of started putting in first wash. Then I remembered that, oh, I actually said that I was going to show how I do washes. And therefore, now I have the first wash of the sky down, but I stopped there. So we're going to do now next wash for the sky. So this is a straight color. So I'm taking a bit of water into one of the wells of my palette. And I know that I used in the sky indefinite blue. So that is this blue here. You can see how much I love that blue because it's getting low. And I'm adding it to the water until I get this watery wash. I think I need a little bit stronger. You can add them as many as you want, those layers. Because if you're working gentle like that, it's not going to damage paper much. You can see how light that one is now. But if you add the color in even, very gentle layers like this, it will look softer and better blended and more cohesive and kind of just the finish is more professional and beautiful like this with watercolor. If you put all the pigment that I achieve with like 5 washes down at the same time, it often looks globby and heavy. Whereas with washes, it looks even and beautiful. And here at the moment, at least, I'm just going to kind of work to get some darkness into the skies. And I'm working at awkward angles. Usually I would have it kind of sideways in front of me. Therefore, it is kind of weird at the moment. But I'm barely touching the paper. I'm touching the paper only enough for the wash to transfer onto the paper. I'm not rubbing. I'm not adding heavy pressure. I'm just touching it enough for the paint to actually get to the paper. And I'm not adding it heavily. Just a layer. Shen, what is wrong with you? That is my young lady there. Unhappy with the state of the world. I don't even know what she's giving out. The window is open, so she might hear something outside or somebody, but I can't hear. Basically, she's telling them what she thinks about it, essentially. And now what I do often, if I'm working on, you know, I know that I'm working on this picture for a while now. So I'm leaving this wash here, and it's very easy to revive afterwards when I need to apply it next time. There's mountains here in the background, but there's also those big clouds. And those big clouds, I want them more gray. So I'm going to take another, and that's going to be just kind of a plain wash as well. The first wash I did, I basically gave everything one tone at the top here. And now I'm working on actually changing the tone. Shading comes later, you know. I will eventually kind of add kind of a half of the area and then gently kind of blend it out with the damp brush. And the trick here doing the glazes is never to rub, never to apply heavy pressure, work very gently. Okay, so a little bit of water. Going to take the same indefinite blue. So this one here. And this one needs to be majority of indefinite blue. And I also need some, oh, which color are we going to use? Let's go with good old sepia. Can't go wrong with sepia. So we basically need to create a gray tone. So I'm using indefinite blue and I'm adding some sepia to it, and I need to add a little bit more. And let's test it out on the piece of paper. How's it going? See, the different color, but I think it needs to be a little bit darker, possibly, or possibly not, but it's already now neutralized, see? But I want, you know, I want it to be gray, but I do want it to bluish gray because it's clouds. It can't be very warm gray. So there has to be more blue in there than sepia. So technically, everything is correct. I'm not sure if I want to strengthen it a little bit, so I might add a little bit more of a blue here, kind of a straight blue. And maybe a little bit more of sepia. And maybe I overdid it, in which case it's very easy to kind of, yeah, I need a little bit more sepia, that is too blue. So basically just keep a piece of paper next to you and kind of keep testing how your color is coming out. Oh no, that's getting close. That is getting close. Okay, see that stormy kind of a gray? That is what I want. So I am going to now take this and I'm going to put it into the clouds. And I might lighten them later with, you know, at the top with the pencil, but I'm making them pretty dark. And as you can see, I don't touch the paper heavily at all. Just very gently with the side of the brush in the bigger area, and just very tip of the brush, barely against the paper in tighter areas. And you kind of carry the paint evenly. So I want those clouds to be pretty dark. And you can see here, you have those dark clouds in the background. Now, the mountains in front of the clouds, I want something a bit with grayish purplish undertone. So I'm taking some of this wash here, because that could be the base, isn't it? And what is a good violet kind of a, or kind of a dark, cold? I might take a little bit of mineral violet, possibly. Sometimes I do mix things up, and sometimes I just, you know, kind of use convenience. So, oh, sorry, that was mineral pink. We need mineral violet. Okay, so what color did we get? Yeah, we're getting a bit closer, though I'm going to add a little bit more of a gray into it. So I'm kind of trying to reuse the colors mixing so the page would look more cohesive. And also now, because I have the uniform wash underneath everything, that is already unifying all the colors and making the image at the end look much more cohesive. So I'm not going to do any shading with mountains now. Yeah, that's a better color. Yeah, I put some more gray into it, and now this one looks better. So I'm going to do the mountains, just the base with that. I'm not going to try to put any shading in here. I'm just now going to now establish more what is the color of the objects actually going to be. And this is how I work. I mix, I figure things out as I go. Usually because I don't explain things or, you know, go as slow as I go now, it kind of happens pretty fast. And often if you already have done some layers, you have some kind of pre-made washes saved. So it goes even faster. That's it. And is there anywhere else I can use these colors? No. Now I'm coming to those houses, and what will I do with these houses? Well, this one is a stone building here. And this one I'm going to kind of leave white. Eventually I'm going to put shading, more kind of a shading into it, so it would look like the white light is. Let's establish where the light should be kind of coming from. I think it's coming from there, from this side, but there's not much of it. Maybe there's a moon around that area, possibly, but I want it to come in this way. So everything on this side, because that's how the artist has slightly drawn it as well, is it going to be in shadow, darker. So this side of the building is going to be in shadow, this side of the building is going to be in shadow. But I'm going to leave, I know that I kind of used cobalt blue to do these, the main wash. It was a mix of cobalt, I think, and something else. But I'm just going to take cobalt. Where's my cobalt? Cobalt here. Oh, wrong well. Wrong well. So I'm going to check once again the wash. Usually it takes a second like to check it, but maybe I'll darken it a little bit. Now, and I'm going to put some so-called shadows, just, you know, cool down one side of the buildings in the background here, you know, where I've left the buildings cool toned. In the foreground, I'll use different colors because I want these to be warmer, because they should be forward, closer to us. So to put it simply, I am putting down the shadow areas on the buildings with cobalt blue, and I keep it fairly tight, but at the same time I'm not going into details yet. I'm just making sure that all the kind of side of the buildings and rooftops and everything that are going to be more in the shadow do have that cool blue on them. And you know that already, you know, you can see even that little step gives so much more dimension to the background. And it's not going to stay, of course, the same color. I will, you know, use some other colors on top of it eventually, but I will keep it fairly muted. And that blue is, I will probably deliberately leave it kind of a glowing and showing a little bit from underneath other colors. So I have buff titanium here, and I'm going to take a little bit of sepia. Possibly I need a tiny bit more. I need to this warm gray, because those buildings are now done in warm tones. So although I do want to depict shadows, I want to, if I put like blue down on them, it just wouldn't work right. It wouldn't look right. So I am putting down just kind of a bit warmer gray, but maybe I take a little bit more sepia. Yeah, but I will cool it tiny bit. And how I cool it is I'm going to take some and very little, okay, of that mix here, which was essentially in the clouds. And this cools it tiny bit. So the shadow wouldn't be too warm. So now I get shadow that is about that. So it's not too yellowish, not too warm. Maybe I'll take even a tiny bit more. Kind of cool it down even further. I could have just taken blue from there as well, but hey, didn't think of it. Okay, so, and now I'm going to put some shadows here, and the same story, you know, in my head, light is coming somewhere outside the frame from there, possibly moonlight. So I'm going to put shadow on this little bit of roof that is kind of protruding, like a dormer. There's a bit of a building that is sticking out here, like closed balcony type of a thing, it seems to be. And you know, you see how, you know, just putting down those very little, very simple shadows will immediately start making everything more kind of 3D. And you know, and there seems to be some sort of a wall here that is facing us, so I'm making that dark. That side of the building is going to be dark because it's, you know, darker, or, you know, in shadow, not dark but in shadow, because it is facing away from light. This side of the roof, the same story, needs to be darker, and so does this side of this tower, whatever it is, and this side of the building. But the bottom seems to be kind of like round, there's no corner there. So I'm going to dry off the brush just like this and just very gently drag it through like this, and I got transition. So you don't need to take, you know, very wet brush and try to rub it out. Just take paint or the glaze off, dab it off, and just gently pull it over the seam, very gently, and you get the transition. And you get very, very soft, very natural transitions that way. So this is one of the best ways actually to kind of make beautiful, super soft blends with watercolor, because they're very easy to make, but you do have to kind of commit to doing, you know, most of it with glazes, which I enjoy. You know, it all depends if you kind of love it or hate it. I love it because, you know, I'm doing it now in a kind of weird angle. Usually I would move it back and forth, you know, turn it around, and those glazes would go down pretty fast for me. And, you know, I put glaze down. I don't ever try it with heat gun or hair dryer, because these just, oops, see, I took the paint off and I just dragged it very gently over and I cleaned it up. Because that just makes paper to curl more, and also paint and the layers don't develop as naturally as they otherwise would. So I just, you know, put quickly, glaze down, and then just move on to another page, just leave it to dry, and then either next day or maybe in an hour I can put down next glaze. So, you know, I kind of have to take it in stages, you know, leave it to be, let the glaze to dry, and then go in with the next one. As for the wolf, I'm not planning to change the tone or color of the wolf, so I just give an extra layer of Misty Morning, that is a specialty color of Roman Schmal that I used for the base of the wolf as well. And then I think I'm moving on to the sword, which gets a bit of, I think, transparent gold ochre. Yes, that's transparent gold ochre for the handle. And I think eventually I put down a thin layer of cobalt blue onto the blade. So I will do the skirt, and I know that previously when I drew the same girl essentially in the same clothes, I'm not trying to repeat it, but I used this. Oh, this is not actually Roman small paint. I think it's White Knights. I think it might be called Pompeian red. I do not remember exactly. I would have to, Venetian red or Pompeian red. It's a beautiful kind of a earthy red. It's not kind of a natural, you know, as if you've dyed your skirt red with natural kind of a plant dyes. You know, this is the red you would actually get if you were to color, you know, dye your clothes yourself. They were very natural. Still, you know, nice, beautiful red, but it's not chemical looking, not over vibrant. So I'm going to put that into her skirt. So she has some pouches on her belt. So, and I'm going to put a nice, and see how it is actually quite vibrant, that red. Okay, I went over a bit of a tie there, but I probably will do that with a gel pen anyway, eventually. So I'm just putting on thin layer. Making sure that it's even layer. Because as I said, not trying to do any shading here now, not trying to put down any darker or lighter areas. I'm just establishing the colors. Let's do the skin, and with the skin we start with, well, let's put water down first a bit, just to make our life a bit easier. Make sure that the brush is clean now. And we're going to take transparent gold ochre, or just yellow ochre if you have it. This is not the only way to mix skin, but I don't know, I use that pretty often. For this type of a skin, like there's different, you know, kind of ethnicities and kind of a darker and lighter and red undertone and yellow undertone, and some of them have fairly bluish undertones. So this one is going to be fairly neutral skin. So I'm going to take Quin Rose, which is this one, and I'm going to test it on the paper. Okay, we need more pigment here. I went to pink. Ugh. I went to pink, so I need to go back with transparent gold ochre. You kind of keep adding one or another until you're fairly happy. Okay, we're getting close. We're getting close. And to neutralize it a little bit, if you feel that it's a bit too bright, you take a tiny bit of blue and you mix it in. And you get much, and that's how you do shadows as well. You kind of make it more saturated, and you know, kind of keep adding tiny bit of blue, which makes those shadow tones. So let me see, is the skin fine now? I think it's going to be fine. Now this is awkward to do now with the angle I have, so if I go someplace awfully over, well, it is what it is. Oh, I have it too heavy on my brush as well. Oh, it needs to be strong enough. So you can see how thin and how, you know, kind of subtle this layer, first layer is here. I'm not really, you know, darkening much the skin at all. I'm going to give a little bit more on her nose right away. I didn't want that underneath the chin, but hey, that can be fixed. And I'm trying to not go too much into the clothes, but if I happen to go a little bit, it can be fixed. I said it's a bit tricky to do it now with this angle, sorry. Okay, and it also goes here, because that actually seems to be kind of fairly deep cleavage here. One of the main things to keep in mind about basing skin is to keep it fairly even, because it's quite difficult to get rid of kind of a stained skin. And here the blouse she's wearing was initially pretty cream with the first base, and I mixed up Potter's pink and cobalt blue to make it kind of more cool toned, because eventually I think I wanted a whitish that top. I have now applied several layers of different glazes. There's several, I'd say about 3 or 4 in the sky. You can see how deep it's getting now and how even that deep color is. There's some in the clouds and in the mountains, and these ones I won't be, like, I will give them a little bit of pencil, but I will leave them fairly loose because they're in the background and I don't want to bring them forward much, so I want to kind of get them fairly subtle, but I do probably need to give a little bit of acrylic pen or something to the edges here to kind of lighten a little bit, maybe I give a bit more contrast, but not a lot. And I won't give much more to her skin because that's going to be mostly pencils anyway, but I did put some kind of a basic shadows down. So most of the shading and, you know, everything that I want to put down with the paint is down, except I want now to do kind of like what is classically considered as a glaze. I will want to put some different colors into the houses. Not too many of them. I won't make it very colorful because I don't want the background to overpower the main image. But I do want to give a little bit of a kind of a difference between the buildings. The house behind her, I decided I wanted it to look kind of weathered and a bit tired, so I gave it a wash of German raw umber greenish, but pretty much, you know, any decent quality raw umber would do the job. It does by nature have a bit of a greenish undertone. And then the buildings at the back there, which looked like they are stone buildings, I took a very thin wash of Mars Black, pure Mars Black, and washed it over to give them a bit of, because it's a granulating paint, it also gives a little bit of a texture. So I put it, you know, all over the building to kind of have this bit of a stone texture. And the building right next to her there, I took this fairly earthy, very natural but still warmish green, and I gave it a wash of that. And underneath where there's also stonework, it seems, I will put down a little bit of the same kind of a Mars Black eventually, but at the moment I'm going to give some Potter's Pink, a kind of a thin wash of Potter's Pink, these kind of in-between little buildings. So, you know, to break it up and make it to look a little bit more interesting, but at the same time not too busy. And then I'm sticking some yellow into the windows, not all of them, but, you know, some of them, to kind of give an effect that some people are awake, some people are asleep. It's kind of a late evening or nighttime. And so I'm kind of doing the windows now and kind of making sure that I don't kind of mess them up too much and kind of have big blobs of paint all over the place. So I'm just, see, now I'm doing the Mars Black little wash on the stonework there underneath the building. And the next thing I decided to do is to have all the roofs in the village to be matching, because you know, you can see in many towns and many villages pretty much everybody uses the same stones on the same roof covering. So I decided it would be kind of like this red roof, kind of an earthy red roof, and I'm using the same color as I used in the skirt, but because now it has, you know, the buildings behind her and everywhere in the village have this underlayer of kind of either blue or kind of grayed down, it does not obviously look exactly the same color, which was the point, you know, which I wanted to achieve here. So that's it. I hope that that gave you some sort of an idea, you know, how I do glazing and what it is essentially, and why I like to work with that method a lot. Essentially, it establishes basically all the shadows, all the color scheme, and you get really nice cohesive scene because you know, reusing and mixing the same colors essentially and layering them on top of each other. So you get more depth and more interest into the scene than you would just, you know, putting, you know, one gradient of pencils down. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. Hope you had some interesting moments here or picked up something useful. Have a lovely creative time. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe, comment. If you have any questions, also ask me in the comments. And bye bye.